Hello, everyone. Um, Let me click this. My name is Stefanos Platonis. I am the VP of Engineering at Dialectica. We are a mid-size information services firm that matches institutional investors and consulting firms to experts from various fields in order to help them improve their business decision-making. We do this through our platform that our analyst team is using. We have built this in-house, and through that they operate our product offerings such as consultation, interviews, surveys, transcript services, and they schedule those interviews. So it's an in-house operated product. We operate worldwide, and the company is growing, and with it the engineering team is growing. As such, we are facing certain challenges that I'm sure a lot of you are facing or have been facing. And there's this certain group of challenges I believe can be addressed through adopting ownership areas for the software engineering teams. Let's first talk a bit about who are you in the audience that are most probably concerned with this topic. You're probably a small to medium startup, not to say that bigger companies do not face these challenges, but they have probably solved them earlier on. You are a product-driven company. You don't just offer a service, you have a product that you have built and you maintain, and a product that it is expanding. You want to expand your product, you want to scale it, you want to add more features, more functionality, you want to penetrate more markets, increase your customer base. And how do you do that? You have identified that technology and engineering is the way forward to scale your product. So your team, your engineering team is growing. We're talking about a team of more than 15 people. Smaller teams, maybe this concept doesn't make that much sense, but I recommend you to think, even in smaller teams, of this early on. It will help you further down the line. Probably you're organized in cross-functional teams. You have back-end engineers, mobile designers, front-end engineers, testers, who work all together, and of course there's a product manager within the team. And of course, most of us now, these days in the startup world, we use agile methodologies, and the agile philosophy ties very well together with the notion of ownership for the teams. So what are some problems you may be facing or you have seen so far? Maybe you are seeing low engagement from your engineers when it comes to product discussions. Your engineers are not well positioned to engage in product discussions, engage with the business stakeholders, and do not feel they can offer much solution in terms. So they're not very product-minded, let's say. Something else you might be seeing is that a lot of the workload and the burden falls on the shoulders of specific individuals in the team who usually know everything about how the product should behave and how the code works, and they know the darkest corners of the code. And it is those individuals who become bottlenecks excuse me, in your day-to-day operations, because they are the ones who are asked to jump into solving problems, they are called in times of crisis, they know how to fix those difficult bugs, and they become the bottleneck in your operations. Something else you might be experiencing is erratic behavior in old functionality. Parts of the product that you thought were stable and robust now are misbehaving or even falling apart. You see old bugs re-emerging, and you can't explain how this behavior is now back or why is it not working anymore. And in general, you might be seeing declining code quality. Now, this is a metric that you can't easily measure, but you have a feel for it. You know that the code you're putting out there is not the best quality that it could be. And we're not just talking about how the code works, but we're also talking about properties such as readability and maintainability. And another thing is there is no easy way to reason on how something should behave on the product, in the code, and why some of the past decisions were made. This knowledge is perhaps lost on people who have left the company or hidden underneath layers and layers of code that multiple people and teams have written, and there's no trail of why they made those decisions or why they made the code work the way they did. So where do all these problems stem from? I believe there's a root cause behind that, and that is the I forgot one more problem, which other speakers mentioned, which is the not my problem mentality. Somebody else is going to fix it. Somebody else is going to respond to that request. I don't know, it's not my job to do that. And it's usually those other individuals who know everything who will go and respond. So like I said, I believe this, the root cause behind that is the lack of ownership for the teams. So let's look at what ownership means and what some of its benefits are. For a product development team, like we said, a cross-functional team with many crafts, ownership means autonomy, product and engineering wise. It means we have the power to decide what to build and why, and to choose our path in what we're building. It means we can set clear goals, and we also have the ability to define KPIs to track progress against those goals. Ownership also means accountability and a sense of responsibility. We feel responsible for what we're building, and we can be held accountable of whether we achieved our goals or not. And I'm not talking here about holding someone accountable with a view to punish someone, but with a view to know who to approach and who to ask, who to consult on how to improve things, and with whom to decide how to improve things. And of course, give the right credit when things go well and we have achieved those goals. Another thing that ownership means is having a mission under which the teams can be united. It's a driving force for the team to know what their mission is, why they're doing what they're doing. For individuals within the team, the craftspeople, the craftspersons, the designers, like we said, the set testers, the engineers, what does it mean? It means ownership of systems end to end. You think it, you build it, you run it. You own the whole life cycle. It also means that by the same people, you have multiple iterations over the same things, areas. So that, as a consequence, means that people gain expertise. They become better at what they're doing, at what they're building, at their craft, at working on the same thing, the same area. It also means that we have the freedom to experiment. And experimentation brings innovation. Innovation brings progress and competitive advantage. It also means that we gain deeper knowledge of the problem domain, of what we're trying to solve. What is the problem, the business area that we're trying to solve? We become better equipped at making the right decisions for what we're solving and who are we trying to serve as the user. And ultimately, for the individuals in the team, it brings engagement and motivation. They decide on what they're building, why, how, and they see themselves becoming better, improving through working on the same things, through honing their skills, perfecting what they're building, so that brings motivation and engagement. Another thing that many people do not think about in ownership is that you can have more targeted hiring. You can find the right skills, the right people to fit inside your teams. If you have, for example, a payments team, you can find engineers who have worked before on integrating with payment providers and building payment systems, and target those with your hiring to bring within your teams. Now, how do you go about establishing ownership areas? You can see here a sample diagram of how an e-commerce platform company could organize their teams around the 4 simple business aspects that I have put there. And start with that in the beginning. Identify the key aspects of your business. Some other examples are payments, mapping and tracking. If you have a delivery app, image processing, or if you're building a gaming app, you might have a player domain. Use approaches and philosophies such as the domain-driven design, which is an approach to building software that matches the software code to, it tries to inform how we write code with input from that domain's experts, and the structure and the language of the code should match closely to the business domain. So it's a very useful tool to approach in how to write code, and also how you have conversations and you engage people from the business. Map the ownership areas to existing components and parts of the code. This could be tricky because the lines are blurry, but you should decide where each thing belongs, and basically do this mapping and categorize, organize, decide this mapping. Assign the ownership to the teams. Make them owners of what you have decided and communicate it. Give them a heads up, tell them what you're doing and why, and communicate to the business stakeholders, any parts of the organizations that are closely working with these engineering teams. Establish clear communication lines. Give them the tools and the means to communicate effectively, structured around these ownership areas. So find them ways to be able to talk with the business, and the business how they talk to your engineering teams with the right communication lines. Now, some more practical tips on the things I talked before. Make sure there is backlog for your ownership area. Make sure there are projects. Make sure the business actually wants to invest in these ownership areas. If you have identified some key aspects of your business, or you believe key, but then business doesn't want to invest in them, there's no backlog or work for these areas, maybe they shouldn't exist for now, at least as areas to work on. Maybe you should merge them with other ownership areas. Communication channels, like I said before, a bit more practically. If you have Slack or Teams, create the right channels. You have a payments team, create a payments support channel, public channels for your domains and your areas of responsibility, so that the business knows where to address those teams, where to put their requests, where to raise issues, and you make your teams feel engaged and responsible for responding to these requests, and minimize and even eliminate this communication to those individuals who know everything, direct communication. Have the channels and as an interface between the teams and their ownership areas and the business. Or use mailing groups, so if your email is your preferred way of communicating in your company. Go through the exercise of establishing a mission and a vision. It's very important for the team. It's a driving force. Make sure they can articulate what the vision for that area and for the teams are, and they know why they're doing it. And even go through some team branding exercises, some fun activities. Create logos that reflect what their mission and the ownership area is, and create some mottos or whatever. So that's another very big driving force for driving engagement for the teams. Decide on code practices. Are you going to have some strong ownership models where only the owning team writes code in that component, or some weaker models where other teams can write, but it has to be reviewed by the owning team? Employ practices from the open source world of how to write and review code. Remember, areas are not immutable. They should reflect the business needs. So if these change, the areas of responsibility and ownership areas should change further. If the business needs change, they should reflect that. So don't be afraid to start, put something there, and you can work on it later in the future. Of course, change is painful sometimes. It shouldn't be too frequent, but don't be afraid because you can change. And again, I will emphasize the backlog is what sets the rules and direct you in all of that. It could also be, part of it could be technical backlog. And on that note, I will talk a bit very quickly about maybe if you have things that are outside of those key business areas, you could form a platform team. And I'm not talking here about the evolution of cloud engineering to platform engineering. I'm talking about a purely application platform team, which could take over things such as tooling, libraries, observability tools, any cross-team concerns, and in general, any technical areas that are outside the business, the hard business aspects. Examples are API gateway, authentication, authorization. You could have a platform team building tools for that. I'm just going to close by talking to you a bit about our journey with ownership areas at Dialectica. We identified some of the problems that I mentioned earlier. For example, some team was touching some code, and later on when they went to work on it, somebody had changed it, some other team has worked on it, and it was completely different. They didn't know how it behaves and why it should be like that now, or how things were completely different. Another problem that we were having, it was the problem of assigning work to teams. Should we give this new feature that is coming as a business need to this team that worked on it recently? Oh, wait, but this other team also has experience. They worked on it in the past. Who should take the work now? So it's confusing, and it's not a straightforward task. So right now we have identified key aspects of our business, such as research excellence, which is how our analysts, how fast and how efficient they find the right experts for our clients, or some more straightforward topics like billing and invoicing. These areas you can drill down into more details, but and also you can group them in bigger groupings, and then you can assign to your teams possible grouping and assignment. You can see, and we have separately the platform team that takes over all those technical aspects. So yeah, we're at this phase right now, and we really hope this is gonna help us in the future with giving more autonomy, empowering our teams, and helping our engineers becoming better at what they're building. So I urge you to try it as well, and I hope it helps you too.
Thanks a lot, Stefane. We have two questions from the audience. Question number one, how does an engineering team that resists the change is being engaged in product-led mentality?
A team that resists change?
Change, yes.
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, first you have to convince them, give them my presentation. Second, you have to drive change somehow. You have to have some compelling arguments. You have to show the teams what didn't work in the past. And like other speakers said in other presentations, have them try. even experimental in the beginning to see if they see benefits. Step by step, one thing at a time, you iterate and you introduce changes. It's very important also to present a vision. That's the way to convince people. That's the way to bend this resistance. If you have a compelling vision, they will follow.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And the second question is, how can an engineer have end-to-end ownership of the product if it is split between different development teams, if the product is split?
Well, we're not talking, well, it depends on what we mean when we say product. It could be a component, a part of the system. It could be the checkout flow. That's a product. It could be seen as a product and as an area. So there's a team that handles the whole cart and checkout flow. There's another team that interfaces with APIs and manages all the payments. And then the checkout team responsible for the checkout flow could talk to this team through interfaces, like it was said before. But again, it shouldn't be a complete isolation. Oh, only give me your APIs, don't talk to me. There should be open communication with as with all these things. I hope this is common sense. Yeah. But we're talking about parts of the product which can be productionized, split into little products within the company, within the product.
Great, great. Thank you very much.